Garbuz, CEO and founder of Vision Advisory. Welcome to the show.
Awesome, Brandon. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It was short notice, so I appreciate it, because we want to talk about a bunch of different aspects that you focus on. And a lot of that is legalization and what's coming up, products throughout the United States, merger and acquisitions. Like, you're in quite a few things over at Vision Advisory. Can you tell us a little bit about your company?
Yeah, for sure. So Vision Advisory actually started less than a month ago, so really just getting started right now, but working with companies across the global cannabis industry on different initiatives throughout the life cycle of a business. So early stage businesses, developing business plans and go-to-market strategies, mid-stage businesses, potentially raising bigger amounts of capital, looking to go public, things like that. And then, of course, to the later stage of a business, sell-side mandates, and really the end of the business life cycle. Been working in the cannabis industry now for 3 years in various legal and business roles, M&A roles, corporate law roles, and looking to leverage that with Vision Advisory.
Nice. I was going to say, you said that you've been in Vision Advisory for a month, but you spent a lot of time in the industry, and you've done a lot in that industry so far. But one of the reasons why we brought you on here is because we had a phone call earlier, and we were talking about what's going to happen October 17th from investors. And so many people you talk to, almost every single person has a different answer. It's going to be a huge sell the news. It's going to crash. No, it's going to be amazing because banks can now put their money in it. What's going to happen? What's your hypothesis?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, especially we're sitting in a studio in Toronto right now, I think, and maybe this isn't the answer that your viewers might want to hear, but it's going to be a little bit underwhelming, I think, October 17th. We're not going to have any retail stores set up yet in Toronto, the biggest metropolitan city in all of Canada. And really, like, a lot of the branding, marketing, products, like, I don't think close to where this industry is going to be when it becomes mature. So it's great that obviously adult use is going to be coming on. You can go now onto a website legally and purchase cannabis products in terms of dried herb and oils. But I think it's just stage one of a lot more milestones that are to come in the Canadian cannabis industry. Obviously, people are now looking out till April, where, every day I'm sure you're hearing of new retail plans of different either existing cannabis companies or new entrants looking to play on the retail game. And then, of course, products. Like, if you look, a lot of my time's been spent down in the US, especially in California. Consumers, dried herb, especially premium dry herb, is definitely still an interesting product category, but there's a lot more product categories that people are after. Things like vape pens, edibles, drinkables, patches, creams, sublinguals. So as those products start to be introduced into the Canadian program, I think it's going to get increasingly exciting from a consumer and investor perspective.
Well, yeah, and you hit that's exactly the way that we should be looking at it, because you're right. We don't have retail. It's only going to be online in Ontario for the rest of the year. And then we look at the fact that we're not going to have edibles, and we're just going to have flour and oils. We're not even close to where this is going to be. So from an investing standpoint, I've asked myself, is it going to be sell the news? I think there's going to be a portion of it that will be. It's because you're leading up to it, and then now you have to wait.
Yeah.
Because the next catalyst will be months from now. Now you have to start looking at earnings, and I think it's a year. Correct me if I'm wrong. They said they would allow a year before they bring up the notion of possibly edibles in Canada. I think that was part of Bill C-45.
Yeah, the regulations contemplated including edibles and what are termed concentrates within 1 year. That was what they had as the outside date. So the way that I think most people are looking at it is that different product categories will probably be introduced throughout the year, and potentially the tail could be quite a bit longer. I think Health Canada has taken a go slow approach with this industry for a long time, which it can be frustrating sometimes from a business perspective, but from an overall policy perspective, I think it's allowed the government to achieve a lot of its stated objectives. So it's kind of a little bit of push and pull there. But I think things like, creams, patches, sublinguals, these are things that are arguably a lot less harmful to consumers than something like dried herb, where people are combusting and smoking. So I think really Health Canada just needs to get its hands around how this can be manufactured compliantly, what dosages are appropriate, what child protection is appropriate, delivery methods are appropriate, and I think we'll start to see more and more products being introduced. Obviously, I think vape pens are something that, it's an extremely interesting product category, because you see it just taking more and more of market share, especially in places like California, like I mentioned. So it's a little bit of a trickier one to regulate. So I think that's one that a lot of people are watching closely. And then, of course, with all these beverage deals, you know, people.
It's going to be big.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting.
Like right now in the U.S., beverages make up like a small percentage. Like,
Really?
Yeah.
I thought it would have been more because they're allowing it. I
Yeah,
thought it would have been more.
It's allowed. No one's really hit the nail on the head yet with like a perfect beverage product that's perfectly dosed, flavors perfect, not going to degrade in temperature, heat, and just like overall packaging consumer experience really hitting the mark. And part of that is because, you know, Canadian players as opposed to US players, we actually have like a lot more scale and ability to do things at scale, a lot more, you know, just economically and with just better quality. That's what we've seen in terms of producing like medical grade cannabis. Might not be the best quality experience from like a THC, CBD, you know, recreational perspective, but definitely in terms of like compliance. So I think in terms of like beverages, it might be interesting to see what happens in Canada, but it's definitely not. I think people get the wrong idea that it's already a massive product category. I think we're embarking on new territory with beverages, and even with edibles. Like I think a lot of people, especially in Canada, think about edibles. They're thinking about the brownies that people made 20 years ago. You know, in these mature US states, you're dealing with edibles that are generation 2, generation 3 products. You're not really using, you know, can of butter or anything like that. It's really just distillate with no taste. And it's pretty consistent in terms of like experience and dosage. So it'll be interesting because I think it'll go far beyond brownies. I've seen people say that, you know, 10 to 15% of all of our food will have some type of cannabinoid. So it'll be interesting to watch, no doubt.
Well, absolutely, and you had a few points there. I'll go back on a couple of them, but one of them is the drink parts and the cannabinoids that are in there. Fivita, a company on the States, they've got, that's what I've been looking at, not necessarily from a stock perspective, although I'm sure it's a great stock to invest long term. I haven't looked at it recently. But what I really liked about it is that they teamed up with WeedMD. And their CEO was the ex-president of Red Bull Canada, and also their marketing guy was the ex-Canadian marketer for Red Bull Canada as well. So you're talking about people who are used to bringing a product and just making it completely or mainstream, sorry. But what's interesting about that is that there is no THC in those products, or very, very, very minimal. And the amount of surveys that are going out and research that are looking into like, gut rot. I've mentioned this a couple times on our show, gut rot and colitis and things like that, where they're showing that high CBD counts actually help combat that and actually help produce good bacteria in your stomach. If we can have like Health Canada or something like that come out and say, yes, this actually is a really good supplement to be taking, do you think then that changes that focus? So maybe it's not THC drinks, but now it's, like you said, it's wellness drinks. Do you think that's going to be a big component of this? Or too early to tell?
Yeah, the way that I look at the pharma medical side of cannabis is probably a little bit different than a lot of people that you have on the show. I have a biomedical science background. I'm used to, in pharma, you have a delivery method that is first pinpointed, and then you do full lab testing, animal testing, human testing, double blind, control studies, and then at the end of that process where hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent and probably years of time, you finally have a product that consumers or humans can actually take medicinally. Cannabis kind of flips that on its head because we're actually taking these products and humans are already consuming them, and we're sort of working backwards and this way to be able to figure out like something like colitis, which I have a lot of friends who've been affected by it, and they actually have had sort of like anecdotally good experiences. To answer your question specifically though, I think those types of products, whether we find out through like true medical pharma type of studies or we're working backwards and seeing like which strains and which products are working, or a combination of the two, I think the delivery method that's ultimately going to be delivered in is going to be something that we're more used to in a medical setting. And by we, I mean the patient, as well as like a doctor and a pharmacist. So something like a pill or a patch or some sort of like sublingual type of product. I think that's what we'll see, sort of how we deliver true medical cannabinoids as part of treatment. In terms of beverages generally, I think I'm very excited about beverages. Like I didn't mean to be sort of down on them. I think people are generally excited about cannabis in terms of like dried herb because we already know that's like a $7 to $9 billion market in Canada where those consumers already exist. They already like that product for sure, and we're just converting illegal sales to legal sales. Beverages become more interesting because it's almost like a new spin-off of the industry, because consumers don't necessarily know about that product yet. They haven't necessarily tried it yet, and it's almost like creating a new product category. So I think there's a lot of things that are working for beverages, because one, it's something that's a lot less intrusive than like smoking a joint or even a vape pen, where I don't think long term we're going to be able to do that, let's say outside or even in a bar or like an establishment legally, just because that's kind of where smoking's going generally. Edibles are interesting, but not everyone sometimes you want to consume food and sometimes you don't want to consume food. Beverages, on the other hand, like, we're used to consuming intoxicating substances through beverages. It's just sort of like a normal human interaction, and that social interaction is already pretty ingrained. So I do think that if different producers or companies come out with products that really hit the mark in terms of flavor and effects and consistency, and it's actually quite complicated to make a cannabis beverage, but they do it properly, I think it could become a massive part of the market for sure.
Well, yeah, and almost those exact same words. I remember hearing Bruce Linton went to a luncheon last year where he was speaking at, and obviously he's got Constellation's deal, and there's a reason why he's so excited about it, but it's a good point. We're used to grabbing a beer or grabbing even a glass of water, a coffee. We're used to just drinking. So if you're able to have that, where instead of going for a few beers, you're able to have a couple THC drinks. One gets you a little bit buzzed, two gets you, and you can start almost having the same effects as you go on, opposed to sometimes with some of these edibles from Grey Market, where you can have the smallest little bit of it, and all of a sudden you're stuck to your couch and you can't move anymore. I'm sure that is going to be a thing of the past, because it's going to be really regulated, but it's really interesting to see that, though, because our mentality is that we're used to drinking. So it would be really interesting to see if that's the way that cannabis consumption goes, but like you're saying, it's so unknown.
I think it's the social experience. Like, I can tell you that you could have a great experience taking a pill, but I don't think, if there's a social aspect of people, and people obviously do use different types of drug intoxicants that would be in a pill form, but I think something about like the social act of drinking is sort of like we're all accustomed to. And then the second piece would really be like competing with alcohol head on. So you're now delivering a product where people are at a party or people are buying a product for a cottage, and you're trying to educate a new consumer who might not be a cannabis consumer, but they might be curious, and all of a sudden you have a product that looks and feels a lot like what's intoxicating to them normally, but as someone like Bruce, I've heard him also say a bunch of times, this is something that's no calories, no hangover or limited hangover, and then alcohol has throughout our whole body, whether it's liver, brain, skin, kidneys, like there's so many known links in terms of disease onset. So cannabis, obviously, it's right now in terms of the R&D and studying, like has been said, or almost ad nauseum in the industry, like it's basically innocuous when you're comparing it to alcohol. Like there's obviously, innocuous is actually probably the wrong word, like there are some limited health effects, but when you compare it to alcohol, the effects are a lot more minimal. So when it starts competing directly with alcohol in the same delivery method, I think that's when things get pretty interesting.
I think it'll be very interesting, because you see it all the time. How many deaths in the year from peanuts, from alcohol, from opioids, and you see how many deaths were from cannabis. And it says zero. I'm sure something, somehow, way would have been connected to it, who knows, but the difference is just like night and day.
For sure.
Because it's like you said, it takes a toll on your body, and it's not to say that everything in moderation. If you take a lot of cannabis, a lot of THC, I'm sure it can affect you, just like if you take a lot of anything. Sometimes you can overdose off of vitamins. If you take too much vitamin A or vitamin B, it's not good for you to have that much. So all moderation, but it will be interesting when they're very similar. You're given that choice, and one is known to have all these negative effects, while the other one, at least for right now, does not have those effects, or dramatically less. I think that's where it's going to really, really take off. And going back from where we first started, coming into recreation in Canada, that's not going to be this year. It could be parts of next year, but where I really am excited about this is that as much as some of these stocks might have matured, if you want to use that term from economics, I don't still think that's the case. This industry is still very much in its infancy. You could almost argue it might have just gotten to its growth stage. I had someone try to say, no, the industry's already mature. I'm like, how is it already mature? There's still market share being created everywhere. There isn't mass acquisitions. There's some, that's signs of the growth phase of economics, but we're in the infancy stage. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Because we're still research and development is the major part of this industry. It's still like, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, I don't even think it's just an objective fact. I get a bit frustrated with, I totally agree with you. Yeah. The game hasn't even started in Canada, right? Like all of the not all of, but a huge part of the market capitalization of these companies, what's being baked in, obviously it's the numbers, but it's an ability to effectively execute an adult use strategy. Yeah. Adult use sales haven't started yet, whether online, in retail, and that's not even considering that, the products that we're talking about, the branding, marketing, actually getting distribution to your consumers. Let's assume that those changes aren't even coming. Even just selling the products that exist now to recreational consumers and having someone go onto a store shelf and pick something up. You have to remember, every sale that's ever happened to date with a Canadian licensed producer starts in a doctor's office. So while, some companies have been able to effectively, gain clients or gain customers or patients through, all sorts of different ways, gaining customers in a recreational market is a totally different game. And one thing I can tell you for sure, in the medical space, you're basically locked into one licensed producer, and there's ways to change, but it's not sort of seamless. In a recreational market, someone's going to go to a store, they're going to buy bud because, they heard about it, or their friend said it's cool, or they like the packaging, or the bud tender told them to buy it, or whatever other reason they're attracted to it. If they like that product, it might be something they buy over and over again. Yeah. If they don't like that product,
they're done.
They're never going to use it again.
Yeah.
So if you have product on the shelf that's, whether from a product quality or a branding standpoint or distribution standpoint, isn't really hitting the mark with consumers, it doesn't matter if you have 1,000 square feet of greenhouse or 1 million square feet or 10 million square feet, because the retailer is not going to be selling the product that a consumer doesn't want to buy, and the retailer is not going to be buying it from you as a manufacturer anymore. So I think we'll start to see as recreational really unfolds, and you can't, buy patients or collect patients on the medical side, and you really have to go out there and earn your customer. You're going to see a lot more focus on that customer experience, the product that's actually going in, and just that whole relationship and brand promise that you make with your consumers.
Yeah, it's a really good point, actually. Really good point. We do have to cut it short here, as we've got a bunch of different things on the show for this afternoon, but we got to have you on again, because I already have like 4 different questions I want to ask you and keep the tandem going, because I love talking about it. I've been absolutely consumed by this industry for years now, as I think it's when it comes from just personal roots when I was younger, not so much anymore, but that's just personal preference. But economically speaking, I mean, that's what I studied in school. We're not going to see something like this again for a long time. We're about to turn over so many different industries. When you start talking about hemp and start going into all those areas as well, dozens and dozens of industries are going to be turned upside down, and we've just started. So I'm glad you agree with me. Infancy stage. There's no way we've matured. But we got to have you on again real soon. We'll keep these topics going, and I'd love to have you on again in the near future.
Awesome. Thanks,
Well, I appreciate it very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.